You're listening to Clickthrough, a total user experience podcast brought to you by Government Technology Insider. Each episode features best practices and strategies from experts in federal modernization on using innovative technology to elevate total experiences. And now, dear listeners, I bring you your host, Kate Macri.
In this inaugural episode, we're taking a closer look at the evolution of total user experiences. We used to live in the information age, but today we live in the experience age. Connecting customer touchpoints is a monumental task, including tooling and systems integration at scale. Most people don't pick up the phone to call the government on their best day. So how can government create a customer experience that gets at the right questions, answers them, and empowers ease of access to government services? The journey begins with a deep understanding of mission needs and desired outcomes, then redesigning for scale and mission focus, and then modernizing for total experiences. For our conversation today, I'm talking with total experience experts MaryAnn Monroe and Joe Jetter to discuss strategies for optimizing federal service delivery from government to you. I hope you enjoy our conversation. MaryAnn and Joe, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So to start off the conversation today, I want to hear from both of you. What are some of the biggest CX challenges facing government right now? And just for a point of clarification, when we refer to CX, we're talking about customer experience.
Absolutely, Kate. I can go ahead and get started, and Joe and I can converse about this. I think we're at a pivotal point in the federal government. There have been so many efforts over the last many years to improve customer experiences, whether those are digital experiences online or interactions in person with different agencies. So there's all different ways in which people interact with their government. And I think the biggest challenges facing government today is really accelerate on this momentum that has started in improving government service delivery. And to do that, you really need to be able to get everybody in the agency or in the programs that you're working in on the same page. And believe it or not, it takes a lot of time, energy, and perseverance to get everybody aligned to what your goals are, what you're aligned to in terms of improving experience. What does that look like for your program or agency? And what we're also seeing now is agencies are elevating their goals to actual at the highest level in their agency performance goals, which is actually a really great thing. So I think the challenge is to continue along with this momentum, but to accelerate and to keep people aligned so that everybody is on board and understands how customer experience initiatives are being governed within the agency and understanding who's responsible for what within this vast ecosystem of a government agency. I'll pass it over to Joe to see what he'd like to add to that.
Well, I think what happens is everything's now being so driven by the consumer experience. So right now we're used to holding a smartphone in our hands. We're used to when we order from one of the major websites, they already know our name. They understand what we bought. They understand what they might want to suggest that we buy next. So these consumer experiences are shaping of the minds of our users, whether they be the citizens that we serve or whether they be the employees of our agencies. They're all centered around that. So when they come and want to serve our citizens or our citizens want to interact with government, they're expecting something like they experience when they're dealing with consumer websites. So I think we that serve government and are very much concerned about how we can help our government more align with what the citizen wants to see day in and day out. And so I think this becomes a very important factor, just as MaryAnn was talking about the aligning with mission and purpose. Very much so, and wanting to get aligned with mission and purpose. It is coming through and saying, well, here's where the users are at, and here's where the users want to be, and making that alignment and align with the mission and purpose of an agency.
Yeah, it sounds like when we're talking about modernizing digital services to improve experiences, whether those are customer experiences or user experiences or employee experience, what we're really talking about is a people problem and not really a technology problem, right?
I think you have to start by understanding what problems you're trying to solve before you implement or think about implementing a technology to solve the problem. So, taking a step back and really incorporating human-centered design practices into how you do work and how you understand your customers, your end users, how you understand their journey across touch points with your program, with your agency, how you understand their behaviors when they're interacting with a digital service, for example. These are all critical practices that must be embedded into how programs better understand the customers they're serving. So you begin by putting the people in the center of how you problem solve, and you understand how they're interacting and using services today, which then illuminates problems, bright spots that you can capitalize on and repeat, but also those pain points that they're experiencing interacting with a touch point or even across services from digital to in person to telephone to social, right? That those are all different touch points, and you have to understand how people are interacting with them so that you can understand the problem you're trying to solve and then figure out what is the best way to go about solving it. It may be it's a process improvement that has nothing to do with technology. You don't want to throw technology at a bad process, right? You want to understand the process. You want to understand the journey. You want to understand the service interactions and that blueprint across the services, and then kind of work backwards to see how might we solve this particular pain point. And then, is technology a reasonable solution as part of that problem solving?
Right. I feel like you just teed up my next question perfectly, MaryAnn. Can you walk me through the breakdown of tooling and staffing and processes, and how do you balance all of those for the perfect CX cocktail?
That's
It's a big
lot.
question.
Yeah. Let's break it down a little bit. So you said tooling, staffing, and processes. Let's actually start with staffing and then go to tools. Okay. So with staffing, it's really important to understand we're at this place in time in government services where many people are concerned about the emerging use of AI and how that might affect their job, to change what they do, how they do it, but it actually can be used to help and enable a better experience, both an employee experience and a customer experience. So I would start, when I think about staffing, is the importance that we're seeing in proper upskilling of staff. So it's less about AI taking place of staff and more about, for example, AI enabling staff with tools at their fingertips. For example, if you're talking about a customer service representative interacting with somebody from the public, being able to have AI enabled knowledge to be right at their fingertips at their desktop for a very simple, efficient response and interaction, should that person need a human being to talk to. But even before that, the digital assistants that we're seeing come into play to help augment interactions with the government, we're just going to continue seeing that. But it's also then going to require more highly skilled individuals to answer more complex inquiries with staffing. Joe, is there anything you would add to that?
So I think as you relate to staffing, and one of the important concepts here is training. The concept of making sure that the staff has the right kind of training, and then it's complemented with a tool set that allows them to hit the mark, whether it's a citizen who's calling in or another employee, and that they're servicing, that they're able to get the question right the majority of the time. That's the goal. We want to meet the experience, and that's why I always like to think about a little bit about the process even first. The process, you want to start with the end in mind and then build that customer journey. And when you build that customer journey, then the staffing evolves out of it. or gets well defined out of it. So I think in many cases, Kate, we have to start with this end in mind. Okay, here's the end and purpose of the interaction. And then let's customer journey. How do we expect that customer to interact? And what is the multi-channel set of tools that we have at our disposal to use? So then when we come up to, how does a customer service agent or a caseworker answer a question or interact with a particular problem, we understand how to get the right data to them so that they can have the best outcome. And then when you have that best outcome, that's what's going to make the citizen or the employee delighted. So the whole idea is that at the end in mind, think about the concept of delight. Now you're starting to then orchestrate process, then the tooling, and then how does that complement the staff? So that way you're getting the maximum productivity out of the staff, but you're also getting the maximum delight out of the customer.
Right. So when you're thinking about that end state for the customer and the end of the journey that you're trying to kind of work backwards to achieve, how does volume and scale play into all of this when designing solutions for total experiences? What does that look like?
So I think you go back to the concept MaryAnn was talking about, human-centered design. And I'll ask her to get maybe just a little layer deeper on the human-centered design concept, because the human-centered design is what then allows us the basis of scale. Once we understand how that outcome, so it all starts with that outcome we want, and that
Right.
outcome is delighted service, okay? It is now starting from that standpoint of human-centered design that takes us through that work that then says, once I understand that work, then we understand what scale. We understand what kinds of systems, process. We understand what the number of staff and staffing. We understand the staffing plan based on volume. The whole idea is that we know most of our citizens want to encounter the government digitally, okay? So when they do encounter the person, they're expecting a higher level of service than what they were able to encounter digitally. The digital experience got to a point where it could not complete their request or complete their interest. So then they went and escalated it to a caseworker or agent. So in that case, they're expecting the answer to come from that person. So therefore, we have to make sure in the journey that we equip that person with the ability to answer a higher order level of question and handle that efficiently, and once again, goes back to delighting the client to me.
So I would use the example that in many of the programs that we have at Maximus, we are serving a vast number of citizens, from taxpayers, veterans, student loan borrowers, Medicare beneficiaries, citizens requesting public health information, et cetera. And one of the things that's so important in human-centered design that really helps you to understand the service delivery is to be able, as Joe said, understand their journey, but even more, understand the service delivery and what that looks like across the continuum. Walking in your customer's shoes, walking in your employee's shoes. How are they interacting, and what systems and tools and technologies are at play across that service delivery? And when you tie that together and then you use data that helps you understand what's happening across each of those touch points of service, that's when so many insights come alive from many different tool sets and things that we have, all of the data that we collect quantitatively, qualitatively. But you have to apply that to understanding the service delivery, so you know how to augment, you know how to shift in some of those areas where maybe you can shift left and shift more interactions to digital where it makes sense. So what we try and do is really understand the continuum of service delivery before we determine one single approach, right? We strive for digital services so that people can get information quickly and move along. But we also understand from the millions of people we serve every year that not everybody needs or wants a digital experience. So we try and balance this based on the needs of the customers of the programs that we're delivering on behalf of the federal government.
So when you were talking about data and the data insights, the data management that goes into all of this, because that's a really critical piece, how does emerging technology such as AI play a role in helping to manage that and modernize for a better total experience? And then if we want to take it a step further, moving beyond the hypothetical, how do you put that into practice?
So basically, the modern tools that we have today all started with what they'll call personalization engines. That was kind of the first generation of AI that was used in many of the consumer sites that we see out there today. So those personalization engines were able to understand basically more and more who was encountering them digitally and then have a digital response that more matched the customer experience. Those tools have evolved over time as AI has gotten more sophisticated. And what we're able to do nowadays is really understand from the data, the insights about the customer. And so, and once we understand those insights about the particular customer, that becomes the fuel for another part of the human-centered design activity. So what we understand is all the archetypes that happen around the data. And then we start to think about that customer journey. And we're saying, okay, each step along the way, how does that data enhance the experience? Okay. So if we have certain kinds of data in the digital experience or a digital channel, we're able to get this kind of outcome. If that's not able to suffice, then in a caseworker or an agent, another set of data would be accessible so that they could handle and answer a particular kind of problem, and so on and so on, depending on what channel that's being used by the customer. So when you think about it from that perspective, what AI is doing is giving the answer to us quicker, whether that's in a digital channel or whether that's to the person. That's kind of phase one. Secondly, AI is now allowing the citizen or the employee to have more information at their fingertips before they encounter a channel. Okay, so I want to ask a question about a service, and so I'm going to use one of the popular tools out there or one of the search engines and come up with a set of questions. And those questions now are a more informed citizen, and a more informed employee is going to come with a more informed set of questions. Once again, that's why you have to equip the channel with the same kind of AI tooling so they can be faster responding and answering to a question. So then, then you're starting to build more and more a data-infused culture. Okay, whether it comes from the citizen or whether it comes from the employee or whether it comes from the agent. So you have to kind of think about it that way. And AI is empowering a faster response, more customized response that moves us along in each channel to delight.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just thinking was, wow, that's really powerful. It's really powerful how AI is customizing that experience and that process. MaryAnn, did you want to add anything to that?
Just a couple of things I'm thinking about when I think about our TXM solution and ways in which AI is actually being used today. It's being used to sense empathy as well. And we're able to understand customer sentiment through text and voice, and our employees' sentiment as well in our platform, in our solution. And that's been a real powerful thing and a game changer that I think is just going to continue to arm us with more data, but also help us kind of pinpoint and sift through some of that unstructured data in a very quick way to give us insights into our employees and their needs and our customers. And that empathy sensing is really critical in our world of delivering services that we hope to delight our customers. And then, as Joe said, AI being used to boost personalization and really be more proactive in serving up answers, but also if we're getting stuck on a website that's known and you've got a digital assistant or a virtual assistant coming in to say, how might I help you find information on whatever you're looking at? So these digital assistants are really becoming more in the forefront of being able to help us deliver information quickly and efficiently. And I think the last thing I want to say about AI and understanding customer and employees, I think it's great if it's used in the right manner to inform and give us better insights. But I also don't think it should take the place of talking to your real customers and understanding them and understanding how they want to interact and get information from your program and the services that you provide. There's nothing more powerful than sitting with some customers and understanding their experience or watching them interact with your website or your knowledge base, what have you, your mobile app, and understanding where they're getting hung up. That's such great insight and user research that I don't think should go away. AI can augment what we learn through user research, but I don't think it should replace it.
Just want to build on something that MaryAnn said. And the whole idea is that we serve a range of citizens. It could be from
Right.
a baby to a 95, 100-year-old person. And so when you get this range of scale, you have to meet them where they are. And that's what MaryAnn was very much emphasizing, that this is our goal, is to meet the citizen where they are and to be able to serve them with what channel they need to get the outcomes.
I have one more question for both of you, but before I get to that question, MaryAnn, you mentioned the new TXM solution. Can you tell me a little bit about that and its role in creating a better total experience before we wrap up here?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. So our total experience management solution is really about pulling together our best practices with technology and tools to deliver better customer and employee experiences. So at the heart of our TXM solution is customers and employees and our federal clients in meeting their mission. So at the heart is people. And then our pillars of our total experience management solution are that about optimizing and modernizing service delivery and operations that we have historically done for many, many years here at Maximus, and bringing the best practices to bear with human-centered design, process improvement methodologies, all of these ways in which we understand our customers better and then can apply an appropriate solution to optimize for our federal clients and those we serve on their behalf. We also talk a lot about how we mobilize our people and our teams. We have an incredibly deep network of partners, technology partners, and partners that help us augment our service delivery when and if needed here at Maximus, that we really consider our strategic partners, not only to help us elevate and innovate our service delivery and our technology solutions, but also to augment when we need to respond to critical needs that the federal government has and people have as they experience life as we move along. And we've moved along through lots of different disaster experiences, pandemic experiences, et cetera. So our best practices with the people and how we mobilize them to action very quickly to scale programs is also at the heart of our people mobilization pillar of total experience management. And then finally, our third pillar is the technology that we use, our FedRAMP authorized technology that we use to augment customer and employee experiences. So we are agnostic in providing many different solution options so that they can plug and play with what the agency may bring to bear or what they may need to have as services provided by a company like Maximus. So wrapping all of that together with our best practices and our CX at the center for the people we serve and the employees who are so vitally important to serving the public is really at the heart of TXM and our solution.
Anything to add to that, Joe?
What we have done here at Maximus is we've pre-integrated a number of best-in-class technologies, and those best-in-class technologies with the security guardrails, safe AI, all within our package, allows us to rapidly customize around a customer experience. So when the human-centered design work is done, the service blueprint is created, we're able to stand up rapidly the technology to have the outcomes the client wants and customize around the client experience. We're also able to come in where the client is and meet the client where they are and help them with this kind of pre-integrated platform evolve rapidly into a new space, new world that focuses on mission outcomes and making sure that we can align with purpose and their mission outcome.
My last question for the two of you, going back to that data management piece, how can data management improve interoperability between newer cloud and software-based systems versus legacy IT systems, and how does this impact the customer experience? Because when we're talking about the federal government and federal agencies trying to improve customer experience and improve digital services, a lot of them are grappling with these newer cloud-based systems versus these legacy systems. And sometimes balancing those two things can be a real challenge, especially when you're trying to present this holistic approach to digital services so everyone is having a good experience. What does that look like from your perspective? If you want to start, Joe.
What happens is like you say, you have to start where the client is at. Okay. There's many years of code bases built around particular application set. There's many years of data that exist and why exist and what it exists for in terms and compliance reasons why things are. So you have to start. We always have to start with the client's at. The whole idea is to be able to create good data management layers and using a number of the modern tools that allow us to extract data, normalize data, and make it usable in modern architectures. So that's part of the journey. I always want to start where how systems were built in the past. They were very engineering centric, not user centric. And so when you take these engineering centric systems, you now have to rethink the process. And that's why human-centered design is so important. And the service blueprints are important. Once we have the service blueprint, we come back and say, well, what are some of the limitations we have with the technology? How do we normalize the data so that we can make best use of the data? What is the journey that you put on modernizing systems so that you reduce tech debt on one hand, while you're being a good steward of the infrastructure that's there. So it's kind of a balance, but it all starts. That's why I love the concept of service blueprinting, because that becomes the guide. Okay, here's the service blueprint that gives us the end result. Okay, now when I think about my modernization plan and how I justify it, budget for it, architect for it, I have this end in mind that I know is going to delight the client. And so it's the journey I'm taking my path, the architecture, the roadmap I'm taking my architecture on so that I get closer to that point. You know, everything's not necessarily built in a day, but it has to be on a journey, number one. And number two, we have to think about there's the various tools now do allow us more and more to extract data and normalize data so that data can be used in a variety of types of architectures. And that's very much new sets of tools that have come up over the last few years that really allow us to accelerate modernization.
MaryAnn, anything to add before we wrap up here?
Just the point that I think what Joe is pointing out is something I'm very passionate about, and that is the importance of integrating and collaborating with the human-centered design components with the technologists together. Right. They shouldn't be working separately, but they should be working in harmony to create the experience, define the current state experience that can then drive us to a better future state using data to help us understand to get there. But the importance of these to practices and experts, group of experts, is so important to be working closely together. And I hope that we're seeing more of a wave of that as we move along and together are working to improve digital services, because it's really important. You shouldn't be, you can't have one without the other. They need to be like this, working together.
This has been an amazing conversation. Thank you both, MaryAnn and Joe, for joining us today and telling us a little bit more about how technology and people and processes can come together to really transform experiences for everyone interacting with government agencies and their digital services. And a big thank you to our listeners for tuning in.
If you want to hear more proven strategies for leveraging innovative technology to improve total experiences in federal government, please subscribe to this podcast or visit us at our website, governmenttechnologyinsider.com. This podcast was produced by Government Technology Insider and sponsored by Maximus.